Hey guys, my name's Andrew Hales and I'm from Com124, and this is my submission for Assessment 1 for Com124 Communications in Context. It is a day late, so I do apologise to everybody that's been eagerly awaiting this exclusive premiere. But basically I was given the task to review Chapter 2 of John Fisk's book Introduction to Communication Studies, which was called Other Models. It was basically a follow-on from last week's chapter where we looked at Shannon and Weaver's model. I've been lucky enough where I've studied the communication models on multiple occasions throughout my studies so far. So to have a bit of a foundation knowledge about what I was about to encounter was good, because upon first reading it is very dense and there's a lot there that kind of doesn't really make much sense, but once you sort of get into it, you sort of start to realise that it kind of does make a little bit of sense. They're all pretty much trying to tell you the same thing. They're just trying to get A to do something to result in B, basically. That's my basic communication model for you, 101. Rather than bore you with all of them, I might just talk about a couple of them. The first one that we saw, or we read about, was Gerbner's model, which was created in 1956 by George Gerbner. It's a general purpose model of communication. It's basically a follow-on from Shannon and Weaver's model. One of the main advances that it has on top of Shannon and Weaver's model is that it opens and allows questions surrounding perception and meaning. So an event isn't just an event, it's how someone perceives that event, and which alters ultimately the way that the message is received by certain people or machines, depending on what you want to talk about. Another thing I found interesting in this section was a quote about from Fisk, basically saying who has access to the mass media is a burning issue in the debate on the relationship of television and society. Now, that debate is obviously now open to a lot more than television and society, because the digital world's basically taking over. This quote basically led me to do a little bit more research into how the digital world is perceived by communicators these days, which led me to a book which was written by David Baker and Wendy Evans, titled Trends, Discovery and People in the Digital Age. And it was actually a really interesting book. It's a long book. I didn't really read all of it, I'll be honest, but the section that I did focus on was basically the section about how basically the way that David writes it, I'll say this: the proliferation of internet-based resources has increased the need for well-designed digital information environments. So basically it's talking about how 21st century information seekers have little time or patience for confusing interfaces, poor use of media, or sites that are difficult to navigate. So basically, communicators these days are having to come up with ways that can take consumers on a journey. Like they want to sort through all the saturated media that's out there and actually push through to get through to their consumers. It's basically, I come from an advertising background, and basically I just got back from an internship in Sydney, and you can tell down there that when they're designing their digital environments, they're focusing on user-centered design. It's basically creating engaging, efficient user experiences. They want to, like I said before, take consumers on a journey, which ultimately results in purchase or action, depending on what the ultimate objective of the individual campaign is. Moving on, the other model that I found which was quite interesting was Laswell's model, which is one pretty much for mass communication only. It basically is who says what, in which channel, to whom, with what effect. So put simply, you can relate that to the to the advertising world. Like at one of their strategies when developing insights and connections strategies is they use a thing go get, who, to, buy. Now, buy spelled B-Y, not B-U-Y, like buy something, like actually buy. So basically they want to get a target audience who currently do something to do something else by some sort of action, if that makes sense. So I thought that model was pretty relevant to something that I've dealt with recently. What else have we got? Basically, the one thing I took from all the models is they're ultimately the same. They're just trying to communicate information, and how they do that has been developed throughout as technology's been developed. They basically just want to make consumers feel, act, do. But that could be not just in consumer world, that's across all sorts of communication, I guess. But my advertising background obviously pushes me to be a bit more focused on that. Another thing that I took from this week was the fact that I realised I've been lucky enough to grow up and see the digital world evolve, basically. Like phones weren't a big thing when I was at school. Facebook only really came in towards the end of my school. So I was lucky enough to grow up in an environment where we had to sort of communicate with each other face to face. It's a bit sad these days that a lot of the kids couldn't do that if you asked them to, which is sad. Even if you see them sitting in a group, they're all sitting on their phones and they're probably text messaging each other at the same time, which is a bit sad because they're sitting meter from each other, but that's sort of for another day. But yeah, anyway, that's basically what I took from this week. I hope this is it, and yeah, I'm interested to see what everybody else says, and yeah, thanks for listening. Peace.